The purpose of this podcast is to educate our listeners, and it does not constitute professional advice or services. The legal areas, services, law and process discussed are relevant at the time of recording, and it is important that you seek independent legal advice on such topics to ensure that the law has not changed or been updated in relation to the area of law you need advice on or are interested in.
Court is in session.
Hello and welcome back to Lawyers Who Lunch. Today we're going to talk about something that affects almost everybody, whether you've been in a courtroom or not, and that is how the law is portrayed in the media and how the media has affected law. So our understanding of justice often comes from television dramas, films, documentaries and increasingly now social media. But we're going to discuss today, are these portrayals even accurate, or do they create unrealistic expectations about how the legal system works? So we're going to explore different examples such as Murdered by My Boyfriend, Suits, The Children Act, the growing influence of social media on court proceedings and public opinion, and the leading campaigns, the very well-known campaigns that have been affected by media.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about this quite a lot, haven't we? When most people, we experience going to court quite regularly, don't they? We know what that's like. Our clients probably know what that's like for now, but actually most people in their lifetime will never experience what a criminal trial actually might be like, or a family court hearing firsthand. Instead, what they actually understand comes from what they're being taught of television, which isn't actually always correct. Media holds actually an enormous power because it educates the public about legal rights, it exposes injustices and can actually encourage legal reform, but it can actually also really simplify complicated legal matters or create unrealistic expectations of what lawyers actually do or what the court system might be like or how your case might be handled. So we're going to talk about those now today. And I think the first example that we're going to start with is Murdered by My Boyfriend. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's actually a really powerful legal drama that BBC produced about a true story. It's quite if you do watch it, I'm going to put a warning here. It's actually, particularly the last episode where she does get killed, is actually quite horrendous. It makes me cry every time I watch it, just to give that warning out to people. It's going to tell the story of Ashley Jones, who was a young woman who was murdered by her abusive partner after years of coercive and controlling behaviour.
So what makes this programme so significant isn't actually the crime itself, it isn't just the fact that he killed her. It actually highlights the warning signs that many people overlook when it comes to domestic abuse relationships.
Absolutely.
And it demonstrates the coercive control that he did to her, mainly telling her what to wear, who she can go out with, watching who messages her, monitoring her phone, who she's calling. The emotional abuse, which is very common in these kind of relationships, with like how he speaks to her, isolating her from her family, the manipulation and the failures by agencies to recognise escalating danger because the police didn't intervene or check the house when he was inside the house.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about this a bit more, like when you going back to the coercive control, it really educates people on how it can come about, because you see the text, you see him pick up a phone and have a look, and then he questions her about it. And there's one of the, not to ruin it for people listening, but one of the episodes she gets all dressed up to go out with her friends, and he's like, you're not wearing that, and has to go out wearing a more conservative outfit, and then she's got a sneaky little outfit in her bag. And then there's a bit where she goes to a hen do and she's like, you can't post that because she's dressed as a cheerleader and it's not meant to be. And it just hones on all these different aspects. I think when people think of abuse, don't they, I suppose the media kind of, you just think of physical, don't you? But actually there are so many different elements to domestic abuse that I just think this is sadly it's a true story, but it portrays well what people are actually experiencing in that.
So although the offence of coercive controlling behaviour was introduced in England and Wales after the events portrayed in the drama, programmes like this and films of the same have helped raise public awareness of domestic abuse and influence conversations around legal reform, and it's definitely changed the law.
Absolutely. And I think another one, I was just looking at it before we started filming, there's another, and domestic abuse isn't gender specific, so actually after that one, a new documentary came out that's called Abused by My Girlfriend, and actually it's the portrayal of a man being in a domestic abuse relationship. Again, if you watch it, please, it's actually really quite sad. It's awful because he gets burnt with like water and also like the iron. It's pretty horrendous actually. But they do really well at portraying what domestic abuse can be like for people.
Yeah.
So what they've done is, rather than like actually glamorise the crime in this instance, the media has portrayed it quite well, because what they've done is use it to educate viewers on the different types of abuse, how actually it can develop gradually, because quite commonly what happens, it's not always just a hit straight away, there's other factors that go into it. So it kind of demonstrates how domestic abuse can develop gradually rather than just be physical violence on its own, because as you've said, it's not all about physical violence. There are many different examples. The Domestic Abuse Act brought that in, and they keep updating it as well, but it didn't just show harm to her, it showed harm and the impact it can have on the child, because again, it's horrendous, this last scene, because what happens is when she does get killed, he's beating her with an ironing board, but the little girl comes out in the bedroom, honestly it gets me every single time, and is screaming at her dad saying mummy, mummy, and she is like crying his eyes out, and he just picks her up and takes her to her bedroom and just goes, it's okay, and then carries on beating her up. So it actually shows that children can be witnesses to the domestic abuse, and actually children are victims in their own right in these situations, and whilst they may not always actually hear or see it like she does in that, in that they can hear. I think we forget, I don't think children are ever given enough credit in these circumstances, that they hear, they might have picked up on the cues or the signs of what might cause something, and they actually can be victims in their own right just from listening or seeing, and it doesn't actually have to be them being physically harmed themselves, and I think that kind of picked that up as well. But it also reminded us that criminal law often only intervenes after significant harm, or in this case death, has actually occurred, because like you said, the police did turn up to one instance and they reported it. He's in the house when she's going, yeah, I'm fine, I hit my head on the door frame or something like that. They didn't come in and check that he wasn't there. I'm not saying that didn't happen in reality, because obviously it is glamorised, but it does sadly happen. Like, we do lie about it. People, I don't think people, I've never been in a domestic abuse relationship, so I can't talk to it, but I don't think people understand how hard it actually is to leave one once you're in it.
Yeah. Because they manipulate you into a way that you're financially reliant on them. They make you believe that you're emotionally reliant on them. You don't have any family. They cut you off from your family.
You've got no one else.
You've got no one else. You've got nowhere to go.
And it's so hard to leave as well, because what consequence does that action have?
He can come and find you.
Yeah, because what happened in Murdered by My Boyfriend was they did actually break up. They separate, and she somehow gets lured back in, and the reason in that one she gets beaten up, and again it could be fictionalised, because I don't know how they know that, because obviously she's passed away, but he questions her and said, did you sleep with someone whilst I was away? And in the end she caves and goes, yes I did, and he kills her for it.
Yeah, it's just horrendous.
It's horrendous. And I think there was that, whilst we're talking about media, I think I sent it to you, about that woman that's just been interviewed on This Morning, I can't think of her name now for the life of me. She was stuck in like a 3-year relationship, and how she managed to get him to get a guilty charge was she was able to sneakily send pictures of her injuries to her mum and build a case of evidence up. Now, I'm not saying that that's right for everybody, because it might not be safe for you to do that, particularly if you've got someone monitoring your phone, and I'm not encouraging that by any means. But they then built up this whole case over the 2 years so that when she did leave, she could prove it.
Yeah.
But look how what she's had to do to survive, basically. Exactly, it's horrendous. And I don't think we necessarily, well, these two, Abused by My Girlfriend and Murdered by My Boyfriend, I do think portray that really well, of how serious domestic abuse is.
Yeah. So now moving on from the realism to one of television's most popular legal dramas, which is also, it's just a brilliant TV show.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Which is Suits.
Yeah.
If you've watched it, you know every episode features dramatic negotiations, surprise evidence, huge corporate battles, and lawyers making passionate speeches. It's just a really good TV show.
Who doesn't of Harvey Specter in mind?
Oh, absolutely. But is it realistic? We can't comment on the reality for America, but here in Britain, it certainly isn't. In reality, solicitors spend far more time researching law than arguing dramatically. Litigation often takes months or years. Disclosure, paperwork, and negotiations occupy more time than courtroom appearances. Junior lawyers certainly don't negotiate billion-dollar mergers on their own. And this show just blurs the distinction between solicitors and barristers, something particularly noticeable from a UK perspective.
Yeah, It does, but it's still great. However, though, Suits has inspired thousands of people to study law because it portrays lawyer as intelligent problem solvers. And I actually watched an interview that, I can't think of his actual name, it's the guy that plays Harvey, basically, did an interview not so long ago, and someone had approached him saying, "You inspired me to have my legal career," and he was like flabbergasted by it, because obviously he knows it's not true and everything, but it was actually great that it like inspired a career basically for someone, because even though again we can't comment on America about it, it does probably over exaggerate what goes on, but it doesn't demonstrate the like really important legal skills. Like they talk about negotiation, persuasion, commercial awareness, strategic thinking, going to court, all of that sort of stuff. So it does show like a lawyer's life, but I think the problem that it has is that the biggest misconception that comes from it is that every legal problem has a dramatic solution discovered at the very last minute, whereas actually that probably doesn't happen. Like 9 times out of 10 you've probably come from the beginning, we're getting you to the end, and actually progress could be much slower, especially with like, you know, the UK experiencing court backlogs. We can't just go in willy-nilly and go, hey, I'm at court today, let's go. Like that doesn't happen. You get given a court date, we get given a court time, we're told when we're there.
And we always say that when a matter finishes as well, it's like the most underwhelming feeling, because it's just
absolutely, you've spent
done.
all that time,
Yeah.
you absolutely
It's
spent
just
all
done.
that time getting to know like a family member, or like you know, getting to know their situation, and then like it's rewarding that you've like helped them, but it's just done and you move on to the next one.
Yeah, it's not as dramatic as it's
No,
shown.
absolutely not. But I mean, it's great. I think I've watched it like at least 10 times, like from beginning to end. It's fantastic.
Our third example then presents a very different side of the legal profession. The Children Act, based on Ian McEwan's novel, follows High Court Judge Fiona May as she decides whether a teenage Jehovah's Witness should receive life-saving medical treatment despite refusing a blood transfusion. Now this is probably one of the best legal films
I'd
I've
agree.
watched.
Actually, I think it really quite accurately portrays what happens, because it's, I'm not going to nick some of your stuff because I know it's part of it, but in like some of the like little court scenes that they have, it really shows what judges have to think about, what solicitors go in and think about, and it talks about like various issues, but quite accurately, that they go, no, go away, think about this, come back, and like it's really good.
I think it's really good as well at showing like the stress that judges go through, that they have to make the right decision, which it might not be the right decision.
Absolutely.
It's a great portrayal.
Really, very good portrayal.
So unlike many legal dramas, this film focuses less on courtroom excitement and more on judicial decision making. Let's try and say that 10 times. And is actually filmed in the actual Royal Courts of Justice. It raises many fascinating questions, such as how should judges balance individual autonomy with protecting life, when should courts intervene in family decisions, and how much discretion should judges have?
Yeah, and I think you get to see like the distinct bit, don't you? The judges have got their own little rooms, it's got the library in it. I appreciate the Supreme Court and the Royal Courts of Justice then is like a lot bigger than most normal bog standard courts, but it does just show like that background of what actually goes through people's mind. And it does like focus on her personal life, but who doesn't have a personal life? It does, and I think that's what's great about it, is it goes to show that she's dealing with these big cases, but also has her own personal issues going on, which is what we do all face daily. Because I think people come in and go, you have no idea what it's like to, you don't know what are going on for you at home.
Exactly.
You know, I may not tell you about it, but you have no. Does that make sense? Like, so I think it's really a really accurate depiction of like that legal life balance kind of thing. But the film also demonstrates something, again, I think the audience rarely sees, is that judges actually carefully have to consider expert evidence rather than quick emotional decisions. Like they took a lot into account. Like she actually goes in the film, she goes to meet the child in it as well, and actually gets his wishes and feelings from his perspective, not just like and they consider the medical evidence of what's going to happen if he doesn't have this transfusion, and like balance it out as a whole, which is what judges should be doing. Like we say this I think a few times, there are so many factors in different, again, across different areas of law that the court have to consider before making a decision, and I think that is depicted in it. And again, some of the procedures, they are simplified for the storytelling purpose. I do agree with that, but it reflected like genuine concerns and issues that come about under the Children Act for people. I suppose it's quite a dramatic one with Jehovah's Witnesses and a blood jacket, but it does happen, like, you know. But it also reminds us that judges are not simply just applying rules. They have to make really difficult ethical decisions, and there might not be a perfect outcome.
So moving on then to something which is very apparent at the moment, especially, is social media and modern justice. So platforms like TikTok, Instagram and YouTube have transformed public engagement within the legal system. AI is becoming increasingly shown on media, such as that guy, I believe it was in America, he used a fake barrister. He used AI to create a fake barrister and use that in the courtroom.
He's actually now created a company off that too. So so I think that was his own little like trial of how it worked, but he's now created a whole company where you can hire an AI barrister to go to court for you and represent. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the judge's reaction to it was just
it was hilarious, isn't it? Yeah, it's really funny. And I think the issue was she wasn't informed. Like that was the whole point, was that she thought he was being represented by an actual human, and he produced a computer talking robot basically.
Yeah. Just scary.
Yeah, it's scary. Like, I like to believe this job is quite secure, but who knows in this day and age, given the what.
So on social media, court cases now trend worldwide within minutes. It's really easily done. Millions of people form opinions long before trials conclude. So, like, for example, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that was very media-led.
Wow, publicised that was. And people were, like, hooked on it as well.
Yeah, you could actually watch the trial.
Oh, yeah.
It was
yeah.
Lawyers increasingly use social media to educate the public, which is obviously what this is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are many risks when it comes to using social media.
Many risks with using social media, and I think the thing with like lawyers and TikTok, like I follow quite a few, and they are really good to follow, but they only show you like a snippet. Like they might answer a question on it, and like people will then go and like run a whole case off it, which isn't actually like the right thing. Like please still go and get legal advice, people. That's like a please do. But yes, and public opinion can place actually enormous pressure on those involved as well. So potential jurors may encounter information that may have never been admissible in court. So, you know, they've got that role of being independent. They shouldn't be influenced. They're not supposed to like read. But it's like hard not to. Like, you know, a couple of years ago, you just pick up the paper. You could like refrain from doing that now, can't you? But when you're doom scrolling at midnight and look at, like you said, the Johnny Depp stuff and all the media that came up around that, and what's going on now with, I know the hearing's gone on and gone ahead, but with Jamie Varley and all of that, look how much publicity that has had. Of course it's going to influence you. It can't not in this day and age, because it's on our phones. Like we can literally pick it up and it's there in seconds. And like today, we all know about Keir Starmer. I'm going to say that again. Today, I know when we film this, by the time it comes out, it won't be, but Keir Starmer has resigned, and we all, well, thanks to Ben, actually, we all knew about it within minutes. Like it's in our hands. And the other problem with that is witnesses then may unintentionally discuss evidence then. And then you've got excessive online commentary that can create prejudice that threatens the fairness then of the proceedings. And then courts have repeatedly reminded the public that justice must be based on admissible evidence, not a hashtag, not viral clips of what's going on. But then at the same time, social media has actually exposed genuine injustices of what's gone on in the world. So campaigns have been raised to raise awareness of domestic abuse, sexual violence, and then actual just like general miscarriages of justice. And it's also increased transparency as well, because what it has done is allow legal experts to come on and talk about situations. Not everybody's represented, I suppose, so actually being able for us, again, like to educate like we are, or use TikTok to answer a question, it's allowing people to be, allowing the legal system, I suppose, to be accessible in an accessible language. Because what I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this, a lot of lawyers will dumb down explanations so that people can actually understand the content. So social media it's not entirely beneficial, I suppose, but it's not harmful either. It's got that, we're on that fine balance of actually it's helping people, but also
if it's used right.
I think
which I think can be said for a lot of things.
Using it responsibly, isn't it? Because actually, like they've just banned as well social media for under 16s, haven't they? So how, like our audience might now differ. So if you're a law student who, I was 15. I knew from the age of 15 that I wanted to be a lawyer. Well, if the social media ban comes in, I can't now go and check all of that out, but it's not coming. It is coming in. It's law now. You wouldn't be able to go and look at TikTok and look at all these questions, and so but like you said, use it responsibly, not harmfully.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of move on now into discussing whether media can influence the court decisions. And I think the answer is more nuanced than many people may think. So judges are trained to decide cases solely on the evidence presented in court, which is as seen in like the Children Act, for example, and the applicable law. However, media can influence the wider legal landscape, as public pressure can sometimes accelerate legal reform. Campaigns following high-profile cases have contributed to changes in domestic abuse law, sentencing guidelines and victim protections. So while individual judges should not be influenced by public opinion, legislators often respond to change in public attitudes reflected through media coverage. And this illustrates an important distinction between deciding cases and making law.
Absolutely. So we're now going to talk about like when media change the law, or can public opinion actually help seek justice? And yeah, actually it can. Absolutely, of course it can. So I'm going to start with the example of Stephen Lawrence and his murder. Obviously we all know about what happened there, but just for context for those who don't, I suppose it's probably quite an influential modern example of the injustice that he was served. Was that he was 18 years old, and he was attacked in 1993, and it was all to do with a racist murder and a failed police investigation. And it sustained a lot of coverage at the time, which I suppose for 1993 is actually quite big, isn't it? And then his parents then go on to campaign and kept it in the public eye, the injustice that he was served. This actually then resulted in the McPherson inquiry, which actually concluded that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist and made 70 recommendations, such as police oversight, creation of complaint bodies, and more recognition about hate crime within legislation, many of now, which transformed the policing and race relations in the UK. And it also contributed to reforms allowing retrials after acquittals in certain serious cases through changes to the double jeopardy rule. But with the question for the audience here is, without years of this media attention, would these reforms actually ever have happened?
No, I don't think so.
No, probably not. They hide them.
It would have just been brushed under the carpet.
And I think we were just talking about beforehand, weren't we? Has Henry Novak got a public inquiry coming out, or I wouldn't be surprised if it is leading to a public inquiry given what has just happened. So that's been heavily publicised at the moment, because he was subject, it was actually the other way around, wasn't it? He was stabbed by a Sikh, I think it was. I don't want to get that wrong, but I think it is. And the police that gets called, this person says, I was racially attacked, blah, blah, blah. And that poor Henry is going, I'm bleeding, I'm not okay, I've been stabbed. And they took his word for it, that he wasn't, no one checked him, no one checked if he's okay, he dies. I personally think it's an injustice. The police have done wrong, basically.
Yeah, because upon arresting, they should be checking.
If someone's going, I've been stabbed and I'm not okay, I'd like to believe that
with
the police,
blood all over him lying on the floor.
Yeah, the police would have checked that there wasn't an injury to him. So there's obviously a police failing there. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a public inquiry about this.
Yeah.
At some point, when that happens, though, because they tend to happen like quite some time after everything's been investigated.
And it just goes to show that hate crimes, it's not a narrow thing. It's can happen in so many different ways.
I think people forget, when you think of racism, don't you? And we've had this chat before, that when you think of racism, you think of generally, like stereotypically, you think of a white person being racist against another race, but actually, it works both ways. Like, I'm gonna say this now, like, but if a black person is being horrible to a white person about their racial colour, that is racist.
Yeah.
And I think people forget about that.
Yeah. So, which is obviously seen in Henry Novak, that was a racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on then to the murder of Sarah Payne, which is one of the most horrific cases. She was 8 years old when she was abducted and killed. But following her murder, newspapers, particularly one called The News of the World, launched a high-profile campaign calling for parents to know whether someone had convictions for child sexual offences. Although the UK did not adopt the US-style Meghan's Law, the campaign ultimately led to Sarah's Law, formerly known as a Child Sex Offender Disclosure Scheme, allowing parents and carers to request information from police in certain circumstances. So do you think this was an example of responsible journalism leading to a better child protection, or media pressure influencing public policy?
Absolutely, look at what it's created, and I think that leads us then on to the next example of the murder of Claire Wood. Following extensive media coverage and campaigning by her own family, she was murdered by her partner, who had a history of violence, and the government then, they campaigned, her parents campaigned for Claire's Law to be introduced. For those of you that possibly don't know what that is, it's actually a register that has been created, and you can request the information if you believe you or you know someone that is in a relationship with someone who's got a history of violence or a history of convictions, physical convictions usually related to domestic abuse, or physical convictions anyway that could put that person at harm. You can do this Claire's Law request, which will allow you to do a background check of that person so that you can kind of put your own risk assessment on whether or not they're safe to be around. So it allows people to ask police whether a current or former partner has a history of violence, to put it in simpler terms, of violent or abusive behaviour. And again, I suppose that's been well supported because people use it. We've got clients that have had to use it. I think that woman in the murder by my boyfriend probably would have liked to have that available. And I think it's led on to, sadly, these tragedies are leading to huge changes being made. A bit with Hollyguard. She was also, I can't remember, I think she was murdered.
Yeah, I think so.
Or attacked, at the very least, by a boyfriend. And her parents then went on to campaign using the media and have actually created the Hollyguard app now, which they've worked with the police to create this like safe app basically that I think you log things that go back to the police. I'm not quite sure. I'd be doing it in
SOS kind of
thing.
I'd
be doing it in Injustice because I've never had to use it or looked into it, but that's the kind of basis of it. They've tried to create another thing to protect these women. I appreciate we're focusing heavily on domestic abuse, and that's not the case here, but that's where they've it's really worked. Where media has worked, I suppose, to answer your question of where's media worked, absolutely in this case. And I suppose where it hasn't, and this goes back to surrogacy, a newfound love, is Adam Frisby and Jamie Corbett had a huge media platform to go against. So for those of you who don't know, Adam Frisby and Jamie Corbett, I think they're engaged. They're a gay couple who have just had a baby, had a surrogate in America, brought it over here, have had to apply for a parental order. And basically, and they campaigned really well. They went on This Morning, they asked their Instagram followers to sign this page. They really raised awareness of where they think the surrogacy laws were lacking in the UK, did a petition to the government. I think within 24 to 72 hours, they'd reached that 100,000 signature box. It was incredible what they were done to raise awareness of this. And the government then turned around and said, look, basically, our laws deal with it, okay? Or I think, what did the email say? Because we both signed it, didn't we? I can't remember what it said now.
Basically, they weren't going to take it in for
They weren't going to take any further. And don't get me wrong, I know that there are other surrogacy consultations and all of that sort of stuff that are already there. So it might, if they carry on, it might change their time. Another one is the death of Baby P. That had huge media and is still used today. So what happened, again, for those of you who don't know, which I can't imagine, probably don't, is it was the death of the 17-month-old Peter Connolly, and it generated enormous media coverage and public outrage because he had suffered more than 50 injuries over 8 months, during which he was seen repeatedly by children's services and NHS professionals. And although some commentators argue that the media focused excessively on blaming the individual professionals, the case prompted actual major reviews for child protection, social work practice and safeguarding responsibilities. So it did have that effect and impact that you were talking about. And actually this is a really useful example of media scrutiny and driving institutional change, but also raising the question about whether public anger can oversimplify complex systematic failures. I think, again, we were just talking about it now before, weren't we, before we started filming. A modern day example of this is that poor baby that's just died now, Preston Davey, and his 2 adopted fathers have been sentenced for his death, but again that has had major social services involvement. The NHS have been involved, so that is probably likely going to need. I imagine there'll be a public outcry for that to lead to another inquiry of what went wrong. They can't not, can they, realistically? But Jamie Farley was sentenced for life, so he's got 25 years. But somebody McGowan, I can't think of his name, the other dad has been given 25 years but is actually allowed out after 16 and then will be allowed out on licence, which doesn't sit right with me personally. But it's, I think, a modern day outburst everywhere, isn't it? It's on TikTok, it's on Facebook, it's showing you what you said about that public outcry of we can't keep having children die on the watch of these professionals. Yeah. Something's got to change. How that change comes about, I don't know, because it is a complicated system that we have, but it just goes to show that, well, and we're used to, I suppose it's a historic thing as well, isn't it? Like, if we didn't like taxes years ago, we'd rebel and go to war with, like, the king, over it. So I think it's the modern day version of us not agreeing to things.
Yeah. I think another example as well is Sarah Sharif, who was about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Should never be placed back with her dad.
No, and that's major social services failings.
Yeah.
And obviously that attracted a lot of media attention.
Well, he was like a known domestic abuser.
Yeah.
And the mum had complained about it, so yeah.
It was horrific.
Horrific, absolutely. So these things do grab people's attention for change.
Yeah.
So I suppose, like you said, when you said media can actually have these influences, it's how it's responsibly used to create that change.
So moving on to a completely different view of sort of this topic is the Hillsborough disaster, which was a deadly crowd crash on 15th of April 1989 during the Liverpool versus Nottingham Forest FA Cup semi-final. It caused the death of 97 Liverpool fans and injured hundreds of more. For many years after that disaster, sections of the media repeated inaccurate accounts blaming football supporters. They were dubbed as hooligans. It was just horrific. Persistent campaigning by the victims' families, supported by later investigative journalism, helped expose failures of the original investigations and ultimately led to fresh inquests, which resulted in a 32-year-long legal battle, which ended only recently in 2016-2017. And it concluded that the 97 victims were unlawfully killed, which is just huge.
Huge, absolutely. And rightly so. These families deserve to find out what went on and what went wrong that day.
Yeah.
It should never have happened. You look today, don't you, of how you get in, you're given a ticket, it's just horrendous.
There's a documentary about it that have video footage from when it actually happened, and it shows them outside all being funneled into this one tunnel. Yeah, they were tunnelled in. That's what
they were tunnelled in, and then what you see in the video, these people literally wedged against the fence.
Yeah, and there's children
and people young kids have gone all excited. It was a huge game day. Everyone was excited. It should never have ended in the tragedy that it did.
No, it was horrific. And this case demonstrates that the media can both distort justice in quite a really dangerous way, because obviously it did inaccurate accounts of what actually happened, but then it can actually later help correct it.
Yeah, absolutely. So these cases that we've discussed have shown that media isn't simply just reporting the law, it can actually influence change. Campaigns surrounding Stephen Lawrence, Sarah Payne and Claire Wood all actually contributed to significant legal changes and policy changes, but this also raises actually a really important constitutional question of, should laws be made because of public opinion generated through media, or should Parliament be cautious about legislating in response to high profile cases? Because I think, as you said with the Hillsborough disaster, whilst media attention can expose the injustice, there were inaccuracies in what was being given out to media. and any prompt overdue that then comes out reforming that can also, but it can then on the other side can actually create pressure to act quickly before all the evidence has actually been fully considered. You know, I know it took 32 years. I think that was a bit too long, but for the Hillsborough disaster. But there can be that, I suppose, scaremongering of if we do it too quickly, what happens?
The media will always shape public understanding of the legal system, and programmes like Murdered by My Boyfriend educate us about hidden abuse. Shows like Suits entertain us while inspiring future lawyers. Films such as The Children Act encourage thoughtful discussion about ethics and judicial discretion. Meanwhile, social media has fundamentally changed how society discusses justice, accountability and legal reform. The challenge for all of us is recognising the difference between entertainment, advocacy and reality. It's not always dramatic, it's often slow, it's sometimes frustrating, but at its best it's designed to reach decisions through evidence, fairness and due process, not popularity.
I think the other thing that I don't want to downplay here is that actually a lot, like BBC I know, have experts that go out and, like, whilst I say they're not necessarily accurate all the time, they do try their best to make sure that they're using the right information in their, like, programmes, because they have experts, and it could be like solicitors advising them, it could be social workers. They do try and actually get people in to ensure that what they are portraying in the media does reflect as accurate as they possibly can in their drama episodes of what goes on. I suppose when you've got an hour episode, trying to fit every single bit in, it's not going to happen, but they do try in their programmes.
I think another example as well I just thought of is Broadchurch, where obviously he was killed, the little boy was killed, and the local newspaper, there's a whole part about it, how, like, dangerous that newspaper was, because they publicised it before the family found out. And it just kind of showed that the media, while it's good, it also can be really bad. And it's just that having that balance between using it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another one, again, like to give another example of a film, I can't think what it's called, it's got James Norton in it. He's in a lot of films actually where it was to do with, like, family law and crime and that sort of stuff. He is a dad in it and has a young boy and is going to pass away from cancer, and he has to work with social services to find the next carer for his child, which is an issue I've actually never thought about, believe it or not, as a family solicitor, because most people would, like, write a will and who their guardian was, but he generally has nowhere else for this to go. So it shows how social services worked with him to interview, like, foster carers and adoptive families to, like, place his child in the right family setting for when he passed away, basically.
Yeah.
So before we finish, our cameraman actually has a question for us before we wrap this up.
Just going to go back way to what you were talking about, the actual, seeing law through the television and news and everything. Going back to the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, do you think by actually fully streaming a trial from start to finish is actually doing worse things? Because I remember watching that and all I was picking up on is it seemed to be an emphasis on making things funny, and it was making a mockery of the judicial system instead of actually trying to get to the bare bones of the topic of saying who actually is in the wrong here. And then I remember Amber Heard's barrister, she kept making a mockery of herself, objecting her own statements and forgetting people's names, and then almost seeming to get quite argumentative. And I felt like that really, it made the whole idea of the system look a bit stupid. So do you think it goes a bit too far with that, and there should be an element of privacy for those sorts of trials?
So certain trials are private anyway. So, like, family proceedings are private, and that is the point of that, is to protect the children so that you can't come in and the media can give names out and all of that sort of stuff. That said, though, it did get introduced last year that they were going to start allowing cases to be reported on in family law court proceedings, which is, again, something I don't actually agree with. But for you can do that. So I know it was filmed, the Johnny Depp, it was such a big thing that it was publicised. You can go and sit in a criminal court, like, if you wanted to. Criminal court is public. You can go and sit in it and go and have a look for yourself. But it might be worth you doing to see the difference between here and the very over publicised Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, because it was dramatic. I do agree with you, it was very dramatic.
It's such a high profile case,
Such
with
a
them
high
being
profile case.
like so well
And I
known.
think the other one is the Blake Lively one, isn't it? That's been, what's his, Blake Lively and
Justin
Baldoni, that's
Yeah.
it. That's been covered like I don't know what. Whereas
And
you
I
don't
think-
see that so much in Britain.
No, and I think with that
realistically.
as well is because there's such serious allegations, like there's allegations of like abuse in them.
Yeah,
Like they should be taken seriously, and I get like what you're saying with it being a mockery.
yeah.
The
And
public
also-
are just gonna be like, oh, ha ha.
Yeah, and they did, didn't they?
But yeah,
did,
exactly.
like,
I still
that-
see videos now, like TikTok compilations of the
Just
snippets
the whole
of
case,
it.
yeah, absolutely. Amber Heard has like gone into hiding. She lives in like Spain now and has like kept her whole life private.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think to an extent it did kind of, but then that goes back to potentially is it an American thing? You know, like don't get me wrong, like things happen in Britain and you do get cross-examined. It was all quite similar, you know, the judge was sat in the right place, the witnesses were being witnessed, the people were sat with their legal team like you would be, and then like whoever was in the background. So it did kind of depict that accurately, to answer your question. Did it potentially over dramatise things?
I don't think it should have been shared as it did. I don't think
No,
it should
I
have
agree.
been live streamed.
No, I
Because
completely
I
agree.
agree with what you're saying. It just completely diminishes the whole judicial system.
Well, yeah, well, look at the other one, Colin Rooney and Rebecca Zivardi, or whatever her name. They had a huge defamation case that went on between one another. And we all knew about it and knew it got her, but we didn't like watch it live stream to know exactly what was going on and what was said. Because it's no one's business either, is it? Actually, realistically, it's between them. It was very serious allegations against one another that possibly didn't need to be in the public eye. Did that answer your question? There you go. Have you got any more to say?
But yeah, just to sum up, I think it just shows how media is really important for education
Yeah,
and for
absolutely.
giving the public an insight into what kind of goes into it.
And I think media as well, like, just to expand on that, like, media isn't just TikTok and video. Like, you've got, in this day and age, you've got, like, the courts do what does a court look like? So you've got images of what the court setup could to help you. So the media can be helpful in that way. But I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. Oh, like another example is what was it called? The farming campaign.
Oh, about
What was the actual
to do
campaign
with
called?
the Inheritance Act and about
Yeah.
them changing the tax bracket.
What was it actually called?
I have no idea what it was actually called, but all to do with the agricultural relief being changed.
Yeah, so like another good one was the farming protests in
Yeah.
London
Yeah.
2 years ago,
Mhm.
about like the inheritance tax coming through, and
Yeah.
that would not have happened had it not been for the media coverage, had it not been that they could publicise it and be like, come down and
Yeah,
protest.
because that didn't go through after.
No, because that was huge.
But I suppose it goes back to that age. I'm not encouraging more here before I say it, but we did used to go up against way back when, if we didn't like something, we would rebel and we would say no about it. So actually, why should we? Like, you know, we all have to live in this country together harmoniously. I know we've got the parliament and government making like overall decisions, but actually they really need to understand how that can impact people in their daily life.
And media does
And the
do
media,
that.
with the farming one,
Yeah.
huge. It needed it, and they needed to understand it. And I think Jeremy Clarkson has done a great job in showing what farming is actually really like for
Yeah, that's
farmers.
another way media
And he's made
does.
it very clear he couldn't do his farming without having made in all the money of Top Gear. And I think that's what people forget. But he's done a great job to show what farming is like. So that's when media's been great, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks for
Well,
listening.
thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Lawyers Who Lunch. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. If you have any topics you would like us to discuss or any other questions, don't forget to email in at lawyerswholunch@outlook.com.